And yes, we are here. Hello and welcome. Let me just drop my voice down a bit. Yeah, welcome to this week's Call of Cthulhu session. A new investigation and some old people back and some new people arriving. And before I allow the players an opportunity to introduce themselves, I think it's only appropriate that I do a quick recap on what happened at the end of the last investigation so that you are aware of what's gone on. So basically, Mr. Weber and Dr. King were at odds with an Egyptian curse within 1888 Victorian London. And at the end of this session, Dr. King was bravely fighting off zombies that were coming to the front of the estate with Colonel Hollingsworth. And as they were fighting, Mr. Weber decided to destroy the Egyptian mummy that Colonel Hollingsworth had brought back from North Africa. Unfortunately, the summoning spell that somebody else was casting took place just as Mr. Weber was breaking up a chair and setting fire to the leg of it. And as he approached, the mummy sat up and actually possessed Mr. Weber, who then carried the evil spirit outside and to safety. And Mr. Weber was found several days later, a gibbering wreck somewhere with probably some kind of permanent insanity. So he is currently locked up in an institution, padded cell and straitjacket. So Mr. Pickles has made up a new character, and hopefully he will get to the end and not be succumbed to high or huge amounts of sanity. So it seems an appropriate time, Mr. Pickles, to start off with you and let you introduce who you are and who you will be playing in this investigation within Call of Cthulhu.
Well, I am Mr. Pickles, the former player of Aaron Weber. I am now playing Melvin Bleeker, who is a librarian, well-read in topics such as astronomy, history, and recreational interest in the occult. He's absolutely revolted by filth as a penchant for cleaning what might be described as unsalvageable tomes and parchment in his job as a librarian. And if you were to look at Melvin Bleeker on the street, you'd think he was perpetually irritated or moderately excited by something. And with that, I'll just toss the microphone on over to Chugawugga.
Hi guys, I'm Chugawugga. I play Willard Peabody, a artist and photographer who's doing his best to improve his social status within London. He's trying to become one of the upper class gentry. He's charming, always immaculately dressed, never without his cane or his silver hip flask. When he's not investigating, he resides in the fashionable area of London known as Privy Gardens. And I shall pass on to Longshanks EPG.
Thanks very much, Chugawugga. Hi guys, I'm Longshanks EPG. Tonight I am playing the character Dr. King. Now the Doctor is from very noble birth. He's very upper class, long family history of upper classness. Father was an officer in the Blues and Royals in Royal Horse Guards, and that just shows how posh he is. Basically, he's a medical doctor, but it's like slight conflicting of his upper classness and looking down, and his aloofness and looking down on the poorer people. By being a doctor, he will, care for the less monetaried people in society, put it that way, and he will bill them, but maybe not as much, or require services from them, and that sort of thing.
Is that illegal?
As money's all as medicine's all money based anyway.
Cool.
And I'll stop rambling and pass it on to Emily.
Yeah, brilliant. Now there was some success in the last adventure investigation. Sadly, Mr. Webber is no longer with us, as previously indicated, so there'll be no sanity or credit rolls added to Mr. Webber while he's in the loony bin, rocking backwards and forwards and salivating all over the floor. However, there is some development for Dr. King. Now, to start off with, I posted it on Discord, but I'm just going to go through it now with you. So you killed one zombie. So if you would like to roll 1d4 for that, we'll see how much your sanity you gain. And I don't know if anybody else. Well, 4. Oh yes, you've really sort of like sorted your mind out. I don't know if any of you looked at the other ones, but you know, if you had managed to kill the huge statue, that would have been an increase in 1d8. If Alan had died, Dr. King would have lost 2d3 worth of sanity. So yeah, so that's the first one. Hollingsworth survives. So roll 1d3 twice. First one is your sanity increase.
Oh, slash.
Okay, so that's another 3 sanity that you get, and roll it again, and this will be an addition to your current credit rating, which will be on your character sheet. 1 on that, and then roll a 1d2.
6.
I don't think that last D3 actually rolled. There's a space between the 1 and the D.
Oh, there is.
It just threw a 1 at you.
Yeah, it just rolled a 1.
Oh well.
Right, so that's +1 for your credit rating. That's was for working alongside Mr. Inspector Craddock. So just roll a 1d3. It should be in the dice thing, so you can just roll it again. I just noticed that there's a new icon in my Roll20.
Click it.
It says snap to center, snap to corner, no snapping.
Click it.
Yeah, so that's still a 1. Excellent. Now then,
Where did the 1d2 and the 1d3 go that I've just rolled?
The 1d2 is +1 to your credit rating.
Okay.
And the 1d3 is also +1 to your credit rating. So your credit rating will go up by 2. Now, Mr. Peabody, apparently we did do the increases in your skills at the end of the last session, investigation, but we didn't do your luck. So if you would like to roll a
39.
roll d100. Yeah, so roll a 1d10. Yeah, so you get 7 luck points added to that.
That'll be to 46.
Excellent. And Mr. King, we need to do your luck. So if you do your luck first. So just so people are watching what's your current luck?
Oh, sorry, it's 15.
15, yeah, so 1d10. The characters can use their luck, that's adding on 3, to adjust rolls, or sometimes I roll it or get them to roll it as a skill. For example, in the last session they came outside and they were running away from zombies and they wanted to call a cab, and to ascertain whether or not a cab was around, a hansom cab, luck was rolled. And if they were lucky, then it was there. If they were unlucky, it wasn't. Okay, what other skills have you got to increase, Mr. King?
What if you fail the luck roll? What was if you don't get above 100, above your skill? Do you not get any?
Nothing happens.
Right.
I'll just check on that, yeah.
Fighting brawl tipped.
Okay, cool.
So what do I roll for that? Is it?
It's always 1d100 and it always has to be your skill or higher.
Okay, so my current skill is 30 for brawl.
Sorry, it's higher. It just needs to be higher.
Yeah. So what do I do now? Roll a 1d10 again? Or is it different?
Yeah.
2. So that brings it to 32. Take the tick off. The next one I have is listen.
Yeah, cool.
So my listen skill is currently 20. Not very good as a doctor being.
Yeah, so that'll be a 1d10 increase.
1d10. 4.
Yeah.
Next one I have is medicine.
Yeah, cool.
My current skill on medicine is 71. No.
Yeah, no. Anything else?
Yeah. Psychology.
Yeah.
So my psychology that I've got 6 is 60. No.
No.
And then my last one is spot hidden, and my spot hidden is 26. Yes.
Yeah, so 1d10 for that. And then we are done.
Beautiful, lovely little 10.
Cool.
There we go.
Okay. Let me just do... Oh, that's fine. We're all right there. So, so that should be everybody done and dusted and ready for the start of the next investigation. Now, this actually, the start of the investigation, remember, you are actually in Victorian London. We're going to say, I can't remember what I said for the last adventure, but we're going to say for this adventure that it's currently the end of January, beginning of February sometime. Okay, so we're still in winter. And of course, London, being a city, has slightly higher than average temperatures than the rest of the UK, but it is still a cold place to be. Remember, there's no central heating as such. Everything's done by coal fires, etc. You currently are all a member of a social club, which is called the Carlton. This is where you hang out. This is where you chat to each other and you make acquaintances. And this is where we're going to start, because I'm going to give you the opportunity to reintroduce or introduce yourselves for the first time. And you're going to strike a conversation. So we're going to imagine that it's probably late one evening. The majority of the Carlton Club have left, and you are sort of like all here at the moment. And remember, you are investigators, so you have some interest, not necessarily in the occult, but some interest in investigating for some reason. You know, it's not as if you're normal everyday people, and it's not like, you know, you're like Miss Marple and everywhere you go bad things happen. You are more likely to be seeking out opportunities for this. So you're in the Carlton Club. You are just down the road from the Army and Navy Club, where all the action last week in the last investigation happened. And it is that you're reading about in the Times, about how it's the heroic Inspector Craddock, who was the main lead from Scotland Yard in the last case. There's a picture of him accepting some kind of award, and that he actually cracked and solved the case of, it actually says werewolves in London. And if you remember from the last investigation, that was something that was first initiated after the death of Elliot Sangster, Dr. Elliot Sangster, by his wife. So you've all sat there, you've all got a glass of port or something similar, and you are looking through the paper, and you come across this story, and I will hand it over to you guys.
So I wasn't in the adventures last week, so I don't know. Yeah,
so that's why I've just given you the information. So there's a story in the Times that it says that an Inspector Craddock has solved a recent series of murders relating to werewolves in London. And that's what you're currently looking at and discussing around the table. So that's your starting point, your starter for 10, so to speak.
Melvin, this is absolutely stupid. Werewolves? Werewolves in London? Who's written this? What? This needs to be reported.
If only you knew the truth, Peabody. They weren't werewolves, I grant you. There was something far worse.
Were they not people dressed up in fur coats? It is winter after all.
No. I still don't understand it, and I've been doing lots of reading about it to try and work out how it was possible. But Weber and I caught up with one.
Well, it's a chronicle.
Weber and I caught up with one in our investigation because we helped with this one, and we managed to demask one of the werewolves. And no, it wasn't. It wasn't a werewolf for sure, because there's no such thing. But it was. All we found was a dead corpse. But seconds before, as in when I say a dead corpse, I mean it was beyond being anything human. But seconds before, it was
changed, Dr. King. I thought when I met you a few weeks ago that you were a sensible chap, head screwed on and all that, and now you're talking about werewolves and dead bodies and.
I agree with you.
Where's the one from where Hackney? No, America.
Yes, he's doing very well. I saw him the other day.
Has he gone back?
No, he's in Bedlam.
He's been institutionalized.
Oh, well, he to be honest with you, he did seem not all right in the head. I mean, when we were looking into that Raspini gentleman, he even heard a lady crying for help, and decided that he wasn't going to tell us till the following day.
Yes, and I think that final case that we worked on together with all those dead bodies and the Egyptian, well, the mummy from Africa kind of pushed him over the edge.
Mummy? Africa? I fought in the African wars, and there was no mention of mummies.
Yes, Colonel Hollingsworth, the chap who we eventually managed to help save his life and his family's life, brought back some sort of mummified human remains, and that seemed to be the cause of all the problems.
This might be a good opportunity for you, Mr. Bleeker, to introduce yourself, as you probably lowered the newspaper at this point and joined in the conversation around the table.
Hopefully, if there are a lot lower quantity of people in this room, Melvin would have pulled out one of his more occultish reading books and has kind of moved himself slowly over to be close to you guys to hear these stories of dead bodies. Did you say that we're moving?
No, I know, bit hard to believe, but as I say, it is a chronicle, and well,
it's the Times, by the way.
Dr. King. Well, nobody will put it in the Times. It's
I like the Times, and I thought they were kind of reputable. I mean, you never know what's possible in this world, and you said they were not werewolves, but walking
corpses. Yes, I don't understand it myself. Coming from a medical background, it's impossible. But yeah, I can't deny I saw them with my own eyes.
Have you been researching pretty thoroughly into this matter?
Only the medical journals and the medical books that I inherited from my grandfather. But
that is strange indeed. Then
I don't think it's popular. I don't think it's possible to research werewolves.
Perhaps you'd have to be doing some experiments. Not that I would suggest doing so, but that would find the answer, would it not?
Well, yes, a good scientific experiment, but I think I might lose my medical license if I start digging up corpses and trying to bring them back to life. That's a little bit one step too far, I think.
Indeed, but it serves as a good thing to think about. I mean, surely. What was your names, gentlemen?
My man is Peabody, Willard.
Peabody Willard and
I'm Dr. Gordon King.
Dr. King. Okay, I'm Melvin Bleeker. I work at library here. I'm one of the best, I would say, but it's very interesting, these stories. I agree with you, Mr. Peabody Willard, that it's not possible, but Dr. King, it's a great thing to talk about. Werewolves and all sorts of other things. Surely our ancestors who told stories of these creatures, maybe there was some element of truth.
Well, I think it's poppycock.
Could be.
Okay, so as you, after introducing yourself and establishing what people's thoughts are relating to the occult, etc., you head off home to your appropriate apartment, and it's not until the following morning, about 10 o'clock, that you get the first intriguing or the first item for the next investigation. So it's rather a crisp winter morning in London, 1888, February, probably the greatest city in the world. The British Empire is strong, Victoria's on the throne, everything is going well. Apart from when you look outside the window, a thin soot-stained layer of snow has fallen overnight and has already started to melt in certain places, and there's grey slush slides from the rooftops into the gutters and falling onto the street. Probably the biggest nightmare for anybody of the upper class status, because it's probably very guaranteed that you're going to get somewhat, your prestige outfits are going to get a little bit dampened. There's this cry of knife grinders and milkmaids and other vendors selling their ware across London, and you wake up to those usual cries and sort of like bells ringing in the background as you wake up and take your morning constitution and all, or your breakfast or whatever, and you can hear the hansom cabs, you can hear the cart laden with produce on the way to Covent Garden Market rattling down the narrow cobbled way, and London awakes to a brand new day, if a little bit slushy. And shortly after 10 a.m. each of you receive a letter. The envelope, the letter is brought to you, of course. However, it would be brought to you in your accommodation, so either by your landlady who brings it up to you, or your butler, your manservant might bring it on a silver platter, present it to you. And it is the envelope itself is really expensive, and it's addressed in a firm but neat hand, and within the envelope there's a single sheet of stiff writing paper containing the following letter, and I'm going to make that available for you in Roll20 now.
Before Peabody opens the letter, he wants to almost like smell the envelope first to see whether or not it's scented.
No, it's not at all.
Okay.
So the letter opens, and you should be able to see it now. Can you see it on the?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it seems to be from Shearer, Hartley and Wigg, barristers at law. It seems to be some kind of a law firm, and based in Knightsbridge, which you all know is a very upper class area. And as you can see, it's handwritten and signed by one of the company owners, and it says, "Dear sir, I'm writing on behalf of my client, the recently bereaved Lady Amanda Allingham, on a matter of great privacy. The details cannot be expressed adequately in writing, and I feel it is best to offer you and any acquaintance that have seemed appropriate, an interview at my office where we might discuss the matter at length. The particulars involve travelling to Dartmoor. Financial restitution will, of course, be offered for your services. Might I be so bold and to suggest tomorrow at 2 o'clock p.m. as a suitable time? Please do not hesitate to contact me and arrange a new time if this is inconvenient. You notice that the date of the letter was sent yesterday, so when it says tomorrow at 2 p.m, it's meaning today at 2 p.m. It's currently just gone 10 o'clock, so you should have that in your handout now to use and to look at again whenever you wish. Yeah, would anybody like to do or say anything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Melvin, well, actually, I'd like to ask if my character would know how far Dartmoor is from here. Is this like something I would want to pack a suitcase for?
You figure it will actually take... hang on, I've actually got the travelling times here written down on a separate sheet of paper. It's going to take probably much of the day. You probably would leave early in the morning in order to get to Dartmoor by nightfall, so you probably think that it's not going to be today that you actually leave. It'll probably be the train tomorrow morning, and it'll probably take the majority of the day to get there. The question is, you're not too sure where on Dartmoor you would be going. Just as a side point, you'll probably be leaving from Paddington Station. There'll be no marmalade sandwiches involved, of course.
Darn. In that case, I still want to preemptively begin packing whatever. Are suitcases a thing at this time?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'd be packing because Melvin knows if he gets his clothes dirty, he's going to freak out and have to change.
Yeah. And probably
so
something quite warm as well.
Yes.
Just cold place.
Yeah. And seeing the current weather outside, it's certainly not going to be getting any warmer for the near future. Yeah, anybody else like to say and do anything before your meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon?
So Willard, knowing that he's got a few hours before the meeting, he's going to go out for his morning stroll, but he wants to head down. He doesn't know much about this lady Amanda Allingham, so he's going to maybe head down to one of the local newspaper archives in London, and see whether or not he can find out any information about her husband and her, whether or not they had an estate somewhere or.
Okay, so make a library use roll.
Is it the green one that I
Yes. Unless I tell you to use a grey one.
Okay.
44. So just a normal success there. Okay then. So you're just going to the local.
If I use 14 points, will it be a better success or not?
You would have to use 14 points of luck to have a hard success. Yeah.
Okay, I'll use 14 points of luck.
Okay, so take 14 points off. So this is the information that you find from newspapers. Okay, and what I'm going to do, gentlemen, because Mr. Peabody has found this, then I will show it to him, and if he then wishes to spread it out, later and share the information, then I can share it with the rest of you. Okay, I just need to find out which one it is. I think it is this one. Yeah, so this is a clipping that you find in it's actually in the Who's Who and the Burke Peerage guide within the library, and this is what you actually find there. And it's this one that you find, and I'm just going to show it to you, Mr. Peabody. You should be able to see that now.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So you head off to the library, and that's what you find in an old newspaper. Dr. King, is there anything that you would like to do?
Not particularly. He will sort of like have his, because he's got his usual sort of routine and his usual sort of I can't think of the word. The people he sees during his doctor's surgery.
Okay.
So he'll probably see them. Patients, thank you. So he's got a couple of patients in the morning. He's got a couple of regulars that he has to see most days.
Cool.
Because they're hypochondriacs. After that, he will then say to his butler Bates and just say, "I'm going to have to go out sometime this afternoon. So if anybody asks, I'm not in. I'll be back later in the evening."
Okay. So let's if there's no other objections, let's move time on.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes,
what was the date on this? On the
Yes, it's it's 7 days ago, say.
7 days, thank you.
Okay, so you will move time on then and start to you meet up, and you suddenly arrive at Knightsbridge and find that all three of you are there again. From talking the previous night, you all sort of like arrive in Knightsbridge. Now, Knightsbridge, remember, is a very upmarket area, a little west of the city centre, and you can see that you're at what appears to be some kind of legal firm that's probably dealing with wills or births, deaths, marriages, that sort of like thing. It's not necessarily a criminal court, criminal barristers. It's not that they would be protecting people for murder and things like that, but it does probably be something for a rather upper class, rich clientele to deal with wills, etc. And as you arrive there, paying for your hansom cabs as you arrive, there's quite a few people on the street, and some of their hands are wrapped up in fur and their arms laden with almost like goods that they're taking left, right, and as well as these almost like upper class people, you also see the more working lower class dressed in rags and trying to sell really simple and common items such as matches or flowers, raising money, the odd penny or tuppence, or never a shilling, but to try to gain money, not to go home and have a good time, but actually just in order to buy some kind of maggot-filled piece of bread in order to survive. And on the corner, near the solicitor's place, there's a cheerful man selling what appears to be knife grinding opportunities, and other people are selling what appears to be some kind of food that has a nice smell, but looking at it could be anything from beef to the cat from down the alley from Mr. Webber's apartment. And you get quite overpowered by the stuffy air outside, and actually going inside the solicitor's office, the smells change somewhat, and there's a smell of furniture polish, and there's a smell of tobacco, and there's those wonderful squeaky upright chairs. Do you know leather, covered in leather, the ones that when you sit back and it's not going, all nice and posh. You even think they've probably been rubbed down to make them nice and shiny. It's a small room that you're waiting in. It contains things like filing cabinets, a painting of Queen Victoria on the wall, a dusted potted palm plant in the corner, a large desk, and sitting behind the desk is a rather stern lady, very very prim and proper. Obviously, being in this position for her seems to be quite an important role, as women and working is not seen a lot in Victorian times at all. And she keeps her head very erect and very proper, and it's only she offers you seats. She then goes and knocks on the door and informs Mr. Shearer, as you hear, that you have arrived, and she comes out and she said, Mr. Shearer will see you shortly. And she goes and sits down again, and after a few moments, a gentleman, obviously Mr. Shearer, steps in to the room, opens the door, and sort of like says, gentlemen, please do come in. He's short, a portly man, and probably in his early 50s, you think. And as you sort of like go towards him, there's that strong smell of expensive cigars. He's obviously fond of a claret and a good cigar at the end of the day. He's partially balding, and his remaining hair sort of like flies up like almost like white wings above his ears, and he's sort of like ushers you in and says, gentlemen, please do take a seat. And you see that there's 3 rather high back chairs, and Shearer goes round to the front and sits down and sort of like looks at you.
As Peabody would have been going in, he would have held out his hand to shake Shearer's hand, giving his name, saying, "Oh yes, good afternoon. Peabody's the name."
Yeah, he sort of like turns around as if to go, and then goes, oh yes, sorry, and sort of like firmly sort of like shake your hand a couple of times, and then turns back round and sort of like goes and sits down.
Before sitting down, I'll take off my outdoor coat and sort of like put it on the back of the chair. And then sit down.
Yeah, your coat and hats were probably taken by the secretary outside when you came in, mainly because you're not expected to take them off yourself. So they're probably hanging up outside, as well as any other things that you were carrying, like maybe, Mr. Bleeker, your suitcase if you brought it with you. And Mr. Shearer sort of like sits down and he sort of like leans back, and he's quite away from the table as his gut sort of like spills out over the top of his trousers, and he sort of like says, "Well, it's so pleasing that you were able to come and see me today. As you can see, this is a very delicate matter, and it is something that I hope we have your utmost confidence and privacy over."
Yes, of course. Tell us more how we can be of service.
Yes, well, it would appear that there's a certain situation I represent Lady Allingham. Allingham, sorry, and she's very sadly, her husband died a week ago. Well,
Oh dear.
shall I? This is in utmost confidence, gentlemen, isn't it? I do have your word over this.
Well,
And he looks at you all.
Yes, of course. I understand completely. It's strictest confidence.
Yes, well, and you, young gentleman, Mr. Bleeker, I think it is.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, her husband, Sir William, shall we say, did not appear to be die of natural causes. He was unfortunately murdered, and my client, Lady Amanda Allingham, is somewhat disappointed with the current police investigation, and she has requested that I, representing her and living in this great city of London, hire some competent professionals to join in the search for Sir William's killer. Yes.
I see. Do you have the name of the officer in charge of the
yes. Well. Yes, I do apologise, gentlemen. I am under quite a strict, shall I say, a very strict regime laid down by Lady Allingham. There are certain things that she does not wish me to portray to you, in case it might hinder or cause some conflicts in the investigation. Shall we just say she does not wish you to arrive with preconceived ideas?
Well, I mean, perhaps to speed up the meeting on our behalf, maybe you could tell us what you are.
He looks quite sort of like shocked. He says, a solicitor. I represent the Allinghams in all their legal transactions. Is that what you were inquiring about, Mr. Peabody?
No, I was inquiring that. Obviously, your current client has asked you to hire certain individuals to look into her husband's murder. Is there any more information that you can give us that she may have told you about it?
Oh well, yes. Well, you might be wondering how I got your names. Well, it appears that you have somewhat of a reputation with Scotland Yard. A certain Inspector Craddock, Dr. King, advised me that you had some expertise on this matter. And there is word out there that you, Mr. Peabody, did somewhat unsuccessfully, but tried your best to solve a case with a certain spiritualist. And Mr. Bleeker, your reputation of knowledge and certain, shall we say, more occult followings precedes you quite well. It's the issue is maybe not so much her husband's murder, which she is quite concerned about. However, there is another problem, and it is somewhat with great reserve that I actually tell you this, in fear that you might make a prejudgment on the lady. So again, hopefully your utmost confidence in this matter. and he sort of like looks around, and he sort of like leans forward, and his stomach and chest sort of like presses down on the desk. The lady believes that her late husband, his ghost, is actually haunting Bargrove Hall, their ancestral hall, and therefore she wishes to hire you to ascertain whether this is the case or not, and if it is, to suggest some suitable measure to lay Sir William's spirit to rest. Now, before you go any further, I can imagine that you will be inquiring pretty soon about the general payment for this. So we are off. I have been authorised to offer you the rate of £10 for the week. Rooms have been arranged for you at Bargrove Hall, along with train tickets to the nearest station, which is Princetown, some way from Bargrove Hall, but I'm sure that arrangements will be made once that we have agreed on this transaction.
Yes, everything seems to be in order.
Yes, anything else I could help you with?
Out of interest, how long have you been representing the Allinghams?
I have been a solicitor for 30 years, and out of that 30 years, I inherited the Allingham's estate from my late father.
Right, yes. Okay. Thank you. Beaker, is it?
Bleeker.
Bleeker.
Can you all roll psychology rolls for me, please?
It's one of my best skills.
Too busy with books.
Oh.
Yeah, you sort of like as
I'm going to use 2 points of luck.
Okay, you're going to use 2 points of luck. Yeah, cross it off. You figure that Shearer is somewhat, shall we say, skeptical. He's almost like worried that this story of ghosts and hauntings, if it actually got out, it would probably damage the family's name, and probably also due to their name being muddied, and that would of course lead to a reduction in the price of their estate and their their daily workings, etc. So you definitely think that he is not actually keen that this word of her ladyship thinking that the place is haunted actually getting out and about.
Okay. So for my so we'll be staying on the manor itself.
Bargrove Hall is the ancestral home of the Allinghams.
Right. And because he was Lord Bargrove.
Yes, correct.
Excellent. Was there any timescale of when we should leave, etc.?
Yes. The arrangements have been, if you are willing to accept the investigation, then your train leaves tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp from Paddington Station.
Okay.
And so it's a full week, so a full 7 days that.
Yeah, you are assumed that within that 7 days you actually discover whether or not the ancestral home is indeed haunted or not. If it is haunted, then it is assumed that you either deal with it or suggest a possible way of dealing with it. And of course, any additional information that the hauntings or seances or whatever actually impacts on the apparent death of Sir William Allingham, then that'll be good as well.
Okay.
So we've got the rest of the day. So Peabody does want to he wants to make the others aware of the information that he found in the press cutting. So whether or not we would do that in the Carlton Club.
I think the Carlton Club is probably the best way. So I'll show that to all the players now. So
are we going straight to the club, or
no? You can do any which way you wish. So if there's something that you would like to do, then that's absolutely fine.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Bleeker, what would you like to do?
I'd like to, in the spirit of pretending that this might be a real ghost situation, Bleeker's gonna want to purchase some various goods that might be useful in occult rituals, like salt, maybe brick dust if that's available.
Yeah.
Just various powders, and maybe if I can find it, a feather that somebody says is a black rooster's feather. I don't know the authenticity.
Yeah, I think you can gain those items for a minimum cost. I don't think that is an issue at all. Anything else that you would like to do, Mr. Bleeker, before the next day?
After that, after I do all my shopping, then I would go clean off my clothes and then head to the Carlton Club to see if there's anybody that's interesting there, sharing newspaper clippings, perhaps.
Yeah.
Peabody will he will go back to his apartment. He will get a bag ready for the following day, go about his business, and then head to the Carlton Club at his normal time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and Dr. King will do similar things and leave instructions that his GP practice will be closed for the following 7 days.
Okay.
And then for certain individuals who seem to appear, hypochondriac patients who seem to appear every day, he'll leave written advice for them, which is the same thing as normal morning constitutionals, afternoon constitutionals, and lots of chamomile tea.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah. Anything else that anybody else would like to do?
No.
Okay then. So you head off to your. Are you all meeting at the Carlton Club on the evening? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So you meet there in the afternoon, and Mr. Peabody, I think you wish to share something with the group.
Yes. So once they're all sat down, and Peabody will say, before we went to see that solicitor fellow earlier, I did a bit of research into the old death of this Lord Bargrove. Very interesting. Very. Mentioned a curse. That apparently strikes down every lord before his 40th birthday. This particular lord, 36, I think he was, 36 years old. Burned body was found, badly burned. But although the police think he was maybe savagely beaten or treated beforehand. Well, by the looks of it, they don't have all that much to go on.
But burned and beaten? That is pretty aggressive. A curse that knows your age. That's peculiar.
I think it's more. I think it's more coincidence, though, Bleeker.
Yeah, that's what curses generally are in my readings. But
anyway, it seems that he had a daughter as well, a young girl at 8.
Are you looking for a lover there?
Good God, man!
That's just what I presumed you would be thinking with a beautiful young daughter of a rich late lord.
No, I was thinking that she would be more open with the information, less likely to hide something. You know what children are like.
Mr.
Free of tongue and spirit.
Mr. Bleeker and Dr. King, could you roll no rolls, please, which is just your intelligence?
Intelligence.
Yeah, no, neither of you, unless you wish to push the roll at all. You can't adjust it, I wouldn't have thought.
What's the risk of pushing?
So the risk of pushing is that what would happen is that you would roll it again, and if you succeeded, that would be fine. However, if you failed, there would be an outcome that would not be positive for either you or, say, the investigation. So say, for example, I think you pushed the roll when Mr. Webber tried to barge the door in, and you actually took the whole door off and landed face down in the hallway because it was a pushed roll. So something not beneficial, and it might not be beneficial. You might not see the negative of it at the time you push the roll, but it might come. Of course, if you succeed, then that's a different matter. If you actually look in your investigator's book, there's some indication about the things that could happen if you push the roll next to each one, but I generally have a good idea what would happen.
No, Dr. King's not pushing the roll.
Okay.
I'm going to push it.
Okay.
I'm just going to push it for the fun of pushing. Push!
Okay. Okay then. Yes, Mr. Bleeker, while Mr. Peabody is relating this information, it brings back information that you know that you have seen before in newspapers or within the library or whatever, that almost like sparks off the idea. And so you can add. I'm just going to show you something. You will have another clipping, which is now available.
From sort of like general day of reading the papers, etc. Do we have any information, or does Peabody have information about the House of Lord comment or something? Did it make news, or
no? All it was
Irish Home Rule.
Yeah, all it was that he stands out quite dramatically against the ruling. So I think that piece of information almost like portrays that he is very much a political, almost like activist, and he's obviously very used to having his own way. He's not afraid, and you remember it from the newspapers. He's not afraid to, number one, speak his mind, and number two, maybe go against tradition. London's changing, the whole country's changing. He's not one of these people who would sit back and let change overtake and engulf him. He's very much the sort of person that would be out there at the front, causing the change, and maybe even not really caring about the people he knocks over as he does it.
Okay.
Mr. Peabody, actually, I was thinking there was I remember reading something. You mentioned curses that know your age, and that I was thinking that I had heard about some sort of I want to say it was Sir Charles Edward Almsworth, but it's possible that my memory might not be super at this moment. It could have been Allingham, but he was smashed by a gargoyle. Maybe slate, maybe limestone.
Well, fallen off the roof.
Yes, a curse, if you will.
Well, more like an unlucky break.
That is probably true.
I'm now sharing with you the clipping that Mr. Bleeker is referring to.
That's what I was trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Well, surely, if the Lord of the Bargrove dies before his 40th birthday, surely we should be able to look back in the family history and isn't that your type of job? Librarian?
Yes. I'm trying to remember, as I'm clearly not in my library here. Let's see. There's at least three children in the family, I'm sure. There was Charles, the William, and they're both dead, I believe, in case of this. But then there was Walter. I wonder if Walter is.
This is probably something that if you roll an effective, a successful library use roll, Mr. Bleeker, then we can say that you have ascertained further information from your local books, maybe even Somerset House, birth, deaths and marriages, etc., etc. So if you roll your library use,
Big money.
So there's another newspaper clipping that I will show to you all because I'm assuming that it will be shared at the appropriate time, which is this one: tragic accident claims peer's life. However, Mr. Bleeker, there is some other information that you ascertain from your information, and it's more to do more specifically with the curse that Mr. Peabody mentioned. This is a bit of text, so I'm just going to, it's just coming to you via Discord to start off with.
Whilst doing that, Peabody's just going to say to Dr. King, he's going to say, it mentions here that the body was burnt horribly.
Yes. It's, bodies do it tends to be sort of like more the clothes that catch fire as opposed to the skin, and then that then causes sort of very, very bad burning and ultimately death.
But they also think that he was murdered and savagely. I think the word that they use, savagely treated, but before his death.
Is there a question that Mr. Peabody?
Are you going to be able to? If you were to examine the body, are you going to be able to find out cause of death?
Roll your medicine, Dr. King. Yeah, nice one. You're actually a GP. You're not a coroner, so you would be able to assess the wounds and maybe come up with a probable cause of death. It would mean that you have to exhume the body, though. The body is currently buried. So,
subject to actually seeing the body, obviously it's been some time since the family of the events have happened. I might be able to have depending on the rate of decay of the body, I might be able to have a good idea, a good guess at what could have caused it, whether it was the savage attack or ultimately the burning that killed him.
Excellent. Craddock. I think his name is Inspector Craddock.
Yes, Scotland Yard. I've met him with
relationship with him, is it?
Is it what? Sorry, people.
Good relationship.
Oh yeah.
It would seem so, considering he recommended me for this, but on reflection, somewhat surprising.
Excellent. Do you think you could do you think you could get word to him? Maybe maybe if he has the ear of the constabulary where we're going, maybe a letter of introduction. It might be helpful in our investigation. Don't want to step on toes, do we?
That would actually require either a fast talk roll down at Scotland Yard, or it would require, probably more suitable would be a law roll in order to get that. So it would need somebody who has a law skill. And Dr. King, because you actually know Inspector Craddock, then I would give that law roll +1. Because of the personal acquaintance. I would give +1 if you're there with the person or you are doing the role yourself.
Okay, but we're in the Carlton Club the night before we're travelling down to.
Correct. You also, Dr. King. You also remember the words of the solicitor, Mr. Shearer, who was quite adamant about keeping it very private and convenient, and you figured that this would actually raise questions. Like Inspector Craddock, and you know what Inspector Craddock is like.
He's a canny little...
Yeah, and he doesn't like leaving any stone unturned. And you very much feel that if you went to him and said, we're going off to Dartmoor, can I have a letter of introduction to? His question would say, why? Yeah. And like I said, Inspector Craddock, and it wouldn't surprise you if you found that he was actually on the train with you.
He would start investigating.
Yeah. So you can relate that to Mr. Peabody.
I mean, my relationship with him after the most events is somewhat strained, which is why it was interesting to find out that he'd actually recommended me. But I have to bear in mind that we were asked in strict confidence, and my limited contact with Craddock, if I was to ask, I can ask him, but if we were to ask him for a letter of recommendation and introduction, the likelihood is that he would become involved, which would mean Scotland Yard would become involved, which is, as far as I understand, specifically against what we were asked to do.
I see. Not on as good terms as we were led to believe. Then.
No, I didn't want to say that in front of the solicitor.
No. At
one point, he
just thought it might have been a beneficial. If we could have made ourselves known to the constabulary down there, maybe.
Mr. Peabody, you would be quite welcome to approach the constabulary once you're down there, maybe using your journalistic or newspaper prowess and skills to try to have some kind of interview with the constabulary. That would be totally acceptable when you arrive there.
Sensing the lull in the conversation while we're at the Carlton Club, Melvin just kind of looks up from his book that he's been passively leafing through and says, I don't think I can think of any the Allinghams that survive. The men, I mean, the ladies, I presume, survive. But I see so many things in my mind, of memory of going through leaflets and newspapers, and then they all die. Very strange. Before 40, the curse is very
Are they
on point.
Are they all accidents, or are they all?
Well, I don't think the latest one was an accident. He said beaten and burnt. You don't get accidentally beaten and burnt, do you?
No, maybe not, unless you fall into a vat of fire and clubs. But there was a Gordon Allingham, suicide by drowning, age 26 or 27. 27. It is 27, I'm sure. But there's Sir Fitzhugh of Allingham. He fell down the stairs. broke his neck.
Right.
I think the proper term for it, my friends, would be an unbroken line of male members in the Allingham family.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we're not, we haven't been asked to work out who's dying or who's killing these people, or we haven't been asked to break the so-called curse. We've been asked to see whether or not the hall is haunted.
Yes, we're being paid to go on vacation. It will be certainly lovely. I've always wanted to see a place as lovely as Margaret Hall.
Mr. Bleeker, are you happy for me to share the information that you have in the Discord Call of Cthulhu Investigators chat?
Always.
Yeah, okay. So Mr. Peabody and Dr. King, I'll post exactly what Mr. Bleeker has found out in the chat now. So you will be able to see specifically what he is referring to, rather than sort of like making notes. So it's just so you've got the idea, rather that it's not to sort of like start quizzing. It's more, or interrogating. It's more that that's the information that he's referring to. Okay, so investigators, anything else that you wish to talk about or engage with before I move time onward to the next morning?
Peabody wants to mention the current job. He wants to say, prove that it's not haunted. How does one go about that? Surely it's in her mind.
Well, I mean, we can certainly do some fun tests and see if there's anything that could be explaining the situation. I suppose if I wanted to be a ghost, my friends, I would walk very gingerly about the house, and I would make very little noise. And if I was to do that, I would be caught if there was, say, powder on the floor. Some kind. I purchased some salt and a little bit of flour. I thought maybe we could sprinkle flour
and brick dust.
I'm not going to tell them about the brick dust.
Oh, sorry.
Perhaps we can see if there's more realistic explanations for our paid vacation, my friends.
I don't know what housekeeping will think of it.
I didn't.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yes,
they're paid to do a job at the end of the day.
Indeed.
Okay then. So so your main investigation is, in the words of Mr. Shearer, is you have been hired to ascertain whether Bargrove Hall is actually haunted or not. And if so, to try to lay Sir William's spirit to rest. Of course, he did add that if there's any additional information that you can add to what actually happened to him, then Lady Allingham would welcome that. Because as mentioned, she's not entirely happy with the current police investigation. So it would go well in your favour and may even lead to further compensation, as we go along. Okay then, so so let's pop along to the next morning, when you arrive all ready and waiting for your train. The train departs Paddington Station quite early in the morning, and you have to actually change trains several times before reaching your final destination. And the reason for this is, number one, there's not a direct service, but mainly in Victorian times there's no consistency in the gauge of the railway tracks, so they can't actually be linked together. That hasn't occurred yet. So as you go from place to place, you're having to swap trains because they're running on different widths of tracks.
Is it just for the gentry, though? Is it?
Yeah, well, you're sat in very comfortable seats, and you sort of like, once you leave almost like the smog-filled city, you have these breathtaking views of the English countryside as it sweeps past your windows, obscured now and again by clouds or steam from the train's engine, especially when you go under tunnels, through tunnels. And pretty soon the endless grey expanse of the London suburbs is replaced by the sun-dappled green of fields and meadows. And as the day wears on and on and on, the landscape starts to take on a much more sombre cast, and you start to rattle your way up ever steepening gradients, and you enter what appears to be a bare, almost windswept, boggy moorland, which is Dartmoor. Could you roll, if anybody has, could you roll, a no roll each? So you all are aware that there is a prison.
Sorry, I don't know where the no rolls.
Your intelligence.
You just roll your intelligence. Yeah, so you all know that there is a prison on Dartmoor. It holds approximately, I think it's 200 inmates. It's very much a desolate place to be. The surrounding guards on the prison is not extensive, mainly because you figure that people would die on the moor from either exposure through this time of the year, or they might be eaten by wild animals, etc. As you're travelling now on the train, you catch glimpses of this almost like lonely countryside. There's sort of like outcrops of granite stuck out here and there that are very grey against the almost like the purple heather that sprouts up, and there are the occasional lonely tree stood out that with its gnarled, twisted branches, almost like slightly leaning as the prevailing winds have sort of like swept across Dartmoor as it's grown. And so the tree naturally, rather than trying to withstand the prevailing wind, it's naturally sort of like bent and given way to it. And the stops that you keep having to do and change become less and less frequent, and also the train becomes more emptier, and the stations that you pass through become more isolated and desolate, and almost like chilling. And it's about dusk when the train, with an almighty hiss of steam, eventually slows down and comes to a halt. And you can hear the guard gets off the train and hollers down the platform. Princeton Town, end of the line! Princetown, end of the line! Roll education rolls. So this is what you might have known from your education. You are all aware that Princetown is actually the highest railway station in England. It actually stands at 1,427 feet above sea level. The line actually terminates here. It goes no further. And as you sort of like get off, you can see those great stoppers that stops the train, and the guard sort of like brings out your luggage, and he sort of like says, "Thank you, sirs."
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
There better not be any damage to this. Very expensive camera,
Yeah, and when there's no sign of a tip or anything, he just sort of like gets back on the train, and the train sort of like hisses up and obviously goes into reverse. And you notice, looking back down the track, there's a slight siding off to one side that you presume leads to where the train will rest the night before setting back. And you're left standing in a cloud of steam and smoke that is generated by the locomotive's departure. And as it sort of like settles out in pure railway children's style, you find that you are, all three of you stand on what appears to be a desolate, a deserted platform that appears to be in the middle of nowhere. You sort of like huddle round your capes and your clothing as an almost like the prevailing wind is cold and sort of like bites at you.
Oh, I hope that man Shiver got word to Lady Allingham and letting her know that we were coming. I hope she sent a man.
Oh, one can only hope.
Where's the guard room? Look after my camera here, King. I'll go and ask. And Peabody's going to stroll off down there, looking for maybe like
there's a door with a little wooden sign stuck out, held on a bracket that says station manager. And as you get close, there's a door that is shut, and there's a door, a sign on it that says station manager.
Peabody will lap on the door with the end of his cane.
Yeah, you sort of like go on it, and it sounds quite a heavy door. And somebody sort of like opens it, and he sort of like sees you there, and he looks like a man in about his 60s, and he sort of like goes, right, and he walks with a slight stoop. And he goes over and he sort of like puts on his station manager's jacket, and does the buttons up and puts on his station manager's hat, and picks something up from the desk and sort of like walks past you at the door, and then closes the door behind you, and he sort of like sees you all there. And he sort of like shuffles his way over to you, and he just says, "Tickets?"
Well, yes. We'll hand over the...
Yeah, he sort of like looks at your tickets and he examines them and hands them back to you, and he says, "All's in. Yeah, they're all right." And he turns around and starts to sort of like shuffles back to his station manager's room.
We're supposed to be getting to the Bargrove Manor. Is there any transportation?
He sort of like turns around to you, and he sort of like stops, and he doesn't turn around straight away. He stops, pauses a bit, then just turns round enough that he's almost like facing you, so the sound will travel towards you, and he sort of like points off in a general direction out of the station, and he says, "Bargrove Hall is about an hour away." And then he stops and turns round and he says, "Sorry, walking." And you're not too sure, but there seems to almost like be a smirk on his face, as if to say, "Ha." And he sort of like continues to shuffle off to his his station office.
Walking. I take it there's no other buildings.
No, there seems to be. You can see round about Princetown seems to be probably quite a small village. It doesn't probably a few hundred. The Dartmoor prison, by the way, is about 1,000 inmates. Sorry. If anybody wants any more information about the prison, then I'm more than happy for you to make either a no roll or an education roll, and I can give you some more information about that if you wish.
I would like.
Yeah, multiple people can do it if you wish. That's absolutely fine. Does Mr. Bleeker? Okay. So you do know that Dartmoor Prison was originally built to hold prisoners of war from the Napoleonic Wars. Prison of Wars. Now it has about 1,000 inmates in, and they're all serving long sentences. It's actually considered by many to be the hardest prison in Victorian England.
Hardest as in like the hardest to live at, or the hardest to break out of?
Both.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Sentenced to hard labour in Dartmoor.
Yeah, it's
breaking rocks for.
Yeah, and actually escaping it. It's you can't see it at the moment. It's in the middle of Dartmoor somewhere, and it's not a pleasant place to be.
First hand as a player.
What time of day is it now? Sorry, is it?
Yeah, it's I think it said dusk when you arrived. I'll just check though.
That's what I have written.
Yeah.
So we'll be requiring, if we are going to be walking, it seems we'll be requiring a lantern, because we will not arrive there before dusk. If it finishes.
I think it might be a bit late to start shopping for lanterns, King. They don't even have carriages.
Yeah. Even when you sort of like go through the entrance onto what appears to be the main street, you can see it down to your right. Seems to be the village, but even then, it only seems to be. It doesn't look like anything like London, which you're used to. It probably has a police station, a post office, and that's probably it. And then accommodation. It's not a huge place at all, and it looks very much, in the nicest way, Mr. Peabody, it's not the place that you would probably want to spend
No,
evening.
Of course not.
Peabody
sort of like do a cough. He's going to go. He's good. King would be a good chap. Would you mind awfully helping with my equipment? Tripod camera. If you wouldn't mind at least carrying one, maybe the tripod. Camera's a bit delicate. Medical condition,
See if I can. I'll try and tuck it under my arm, but as I've got my medical bag and my own
good
suit.
man.
But,
Peabody will leave his
there's both Peabody and Dr. King are of similar social class status, aren't they?
King is upper class.
Yeah. And what's Mr. Peabody?
Upper middle class.
Upper middle class. What's the difference between upper middle class and middle upper class? Are you at the high end of middle class?
Well, it goes on credit rating.
Yeah,
so my credit rating's 50. So I'm at the high end of middle class. If
Yeah.
I'd gone another 5,
Okay, then.
I would have been above class. So King he's got a credit rating of 60, 70. If he's upper class.
Well, no, it doesn't only come into credit rating in any case. It can come into inheritance. For example, you could have somebody who's inherited a huge amount and wasted it all on gambling. So their credit rating might be quite low, but because they've inherited a title, they would still be seen as upper class. Mr. Peabody, you're going to have to roll a charm roll in order to convince Dr. King of doing this, because he's actually higher up the social ladder than you are. So by all means, roll your charm.
Do I get any pluses for mentioning my medical condition?
No. Yeah, you sort of like, could you please, you try to charm him by getting him to help you. And Dr. King, you sort of like react to it very much like, it's almost as if Mr. Peabody is asking you to be his manservant.
I'm afraid not, Peabody. My hands are rather full of my own things, I'm afraid.
And probably too delicate, because you do use them for medical
things.
Yeah. So you failed to charm Dr. King into helping you, Mr. Peabody. And I think just while you're waiting on the desolate station, I think that'll be a suitable time to take the first break for the night. So if you're watching us in chat, then thank you very much for coming along. Really do appreciate it. Sorry that I can't engage with you throughout. I try to, when the players are talking, try to quickly type some messages, but once I'm being the keeper, I tend to be more engaged in the game and the atmosphere, so I do apologize for that. We're going to have a quick 10-minute break, and during that time, if there's any questions that you would like me to answer in the chat, then please do put them there. I'll just go up and grab a coffee, and then I will be back in chat only to answer them, and then we'll be back as the investigators will continue the investigation into the mystery which is called the Burnt Man in about 10 minutes. So yeah, don't go away, and I will put on the AFK sign.
think it was because where his offices were, because it sounded like they were very much in sort of like a lower end of
No, not Knightsbridge. No, not Knightsbridge is a
no,
very...
but with you saying that, there was a person outside grinding knives to sharpen and stuff.
Because
that's where business is.
Rich people got money.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, welcome back. We are the investigators are currently. It appears that they are stranded at Princetown, the end of the line, the Great British Railway line, and they're heading for a place called Bargrove Hall, where they have been hired by the lady of the house to see whether or not what she believes the Bargrove Hall is haunted after the rather suspicious or savage or tragic death of her late husband. So the party of investigators have arrived at Princetown, the end of the line. They've encountered the rather non-committal station manager, who has informed them that it's going to take them an hour's walk to get to Bargrove. Mr Peabody tried to get Dr King to carry his luggage, but was unsuccessful in his charm role, and that's where we left it. So we're ready to start again. And yeah, exactly from that point. So you are all stood on the platform with your luggage.
So Peabody's going to put the large bag containing his tripod over one shoulder, pick up the case in the camera in one hand, and pick up his other case in his other hand.
Yeah, so Mr Peabody sort of like picks up all his quite uncharacteristically picks up all his own luggage and secretes it over, or hangs it on his person. What would the rest of you like to do?
I would have thought you richer sorts brought servants along.
No, unfortunately, my butler had to stay behind and look after the house and my wife.
I don't have a butler or a manservant.
Oh, my apologies then. You're like one of me and my sort.
Peabody just sort of like looks him up and down and looks at his cut off his jib, his cloth, and says, no.
Well then,
there's no transportation. We're going to have to walk.
It appears so. But while we do that, I have some fun facts about the prison nearby that I could regale all of you with.
Are you doing this while standing on the station, or do you wish to set off walking?
Yeah. He said we'd do it as we were walking.
Okay, so you leave the station, and as you leave the station, you see, once you're outside on the road, you see coming down, you have to turn left out the station to head to Bargrove Hall. Down to the right, there is the remains of, the other buildings of Princetown. But you see coming down the road from the direction of Bargrove Hall, a rather expensive coach. It's not a hansom cab, it's a proper coach, and it's pulled by two white horses, and there you hear the sounds of hooves and the wheels on the gravel outside the station as it sort of like pulls up, and you notice that up on the front of it, sat on the driver's bench, is quite a substantial man. He has a mop of what appears to be ginger-looking hair firmly tamed underneath a coach driver's hat of some description, and he has one of those huge, almost like poncho things on that sort of like cascade down the over his lower coat and his breeches and boots, and he has some gloved hands that he holds onto the reins, and he sort of like pulls up and stops and sort of like looks at you, and he says, "Will you be bound for Margrove Hall?"
Oh, thank God! Yes, man. Yes. Be a good chap. Help me with my my provisions.
He sort of like gets off his driver's seat and sort of like tethers the reins around what appears to be a metal loop, and he gets down and he sort of like opens the door to the carriage and lowers what seems to be like a swing down footstool, but what you actually notice is actually a wooden footstool that he actually picks out and puts on the floor for you. And he doesn't sort of like say anything, or he doesn't engage you with anything. He just sort of like starts to put the your luggage firmly on top of the roof. He sort of like starts to make sure that it's firmly attached up there, and as you sort of like get in, you notice that there's just started a fresh fall of snow, and that seems to be starting to cover around the area. And once you sort of like in, and it will actually hold 4 people, 2 facing the driver and 2 facing away from the direction you're driving in. So it looks almost like a wild western wagon carriage, something like that.
Peabody sit facing the driver, facing the way that they're going.
Yeah, and you sort of like head off. And I've got a map to show you. You head off what appears to be, it's really is a bone-shaking ride. The ways, the roads are very rough, and there's loads of gullies and dips in it. And it only takes about 20 minutes to get to the Bargrove Hall. And I'm just going to put you onto the map. Now, hopefully you can only see some of this. Is that correct?
Yes.
No, not me, because I've got something else.
I see to Plymouth.
Yeah, so you were here, yeah, in Princetown. As you're heading up this road here, you notice the Dartmoor prison as you ride out of Princetown, and you can see it out in the distance is a rather grey looking building, very dominating of the area, and almost like it looks like some kind of medieval castle perched out there. You can see that you turn left at the first junction, and you can see there's one of those typical signs that says "To London," to Bargrove, and you can see on either side you can see a range of things. It's Dartmoor's not completely flat. There are hillocks and mounds, and you can also see as you look out the window, you can see that it's very desolate. Can you all roll a spot hidden for me, please? So Mr Bleeker, Mr Peabody, you also see what appears to be stones, almost like obelisks, or tall, sort of like lots of flat stones built up at various positions across the moor. And you sort of like ride up to this place here, and at that point you can see a town or a village further round, and it looks incredibly desolate. It looks like it's very small. It looks like it's very poor, and you figured the villagers must be very hardy to live in this area and sustain a living out on Dartmoor. And as you can see, the carriage turns and heads up the rest of the hill. So Bargrove is almost like the Bargrove Hall is up on top of a hill, and Bargrove, the village, is almost like in its shadow. It's as if it sort of like overpowers it, you know, and there's almost like that feeling of servitude, you know, that here up in Bargrove Hall, that's where the people live, and down below, that's where the servants live and sort of like frequent. And yeah, and you go up to the hall. Does anybody want to say or do anything on the travel?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
I would like to, if I may, of course, I'd like to roll history to see if I know anything additional about Bargrove, perhaps if the assertions that you just made are true.
Yeah, cool. So roll your history.
And I'd like to share whether it's actually good information or not with my cohorts. History.
Yeah, you know that Bargrove originally was almost like the servants' accommodation, but now it still does have some form of connection with Bargrove Hall in the sense that it is Bargrove's property. People do pay rent to the manor house, and it's almost still in that medieval era of, you know, this is our land, you pay us to live there. Apart from that, there's no other thing that you remember. It's never been in the news or anything like that, as neither has Bargrove Hall, apart from the recent murdering.
So it'd be safe to say there's never been like any major riots or revolutions or rebellions or pirates?
No, not at all.
Excellent.
Okay, so you turn off and you start to head up to Bargrove Hall, and you suddenly notice that it's set in. It's a bit like Colonel Hollingsworth's townhouse, in the sense that it's carefully around it are carefully tended lawns and flower beds, and it almost like seems to be almost like the wrong setup. It looks so out of place. I mean, obviously due to the season, the flower beds are bare, there's nothing growing in them, but you can see the lumps of almost like the frost hardened soil in the place, and dotted around the estate as you ride up through the main entrance. You can see hedges and trees that have been carefully pruned, and the hedges have almost like been manicured. Again, the majority, if not all, the leaves have lost. All the trees have lost their leaves. They're quite bare. But apart from that, you know, it looks out of place from the rest of the surrounding Dartmoor. As you walk, do your carriage ride up there, there's 3 other buildings or places that I can tell you about. The first thing is that there appears to be some kind of stable, again very much like Colonel Hollingsworth setup. Also, you do notice that there appears to be a whitewashed cottage that you assume is probably something to do with the groundskeeper or something like that. And as you go around, you do notice that off to one side there appears to be a cemetery with 2 large, almost like cypress trees or yew trees, growing and sort of like bordering out on both sides of the gate, the entrance. And you know, you can see the shadows of various almost like huddled together gravestones. It looks like it's still an operational cemetery. Okay then. So you arrive, and you as you arrive to the main door, light sort of like spills out as the door is opened, and you notice that there's two people stood there, dressed in black and white, very erect and upright, and hands. The gentleman has hands behind his back, and then you can see that there seems to be a woman who looks quite rugged and almost like fierce. And she stood there, and she's obviously in some kind of maid outfit, but probably you sort of like think it's more of a housekeeper. And you sort of like settle the carriage stops, and the carriage driver comes around, opens the door, and puts the stool down once more for you to get off the carriage. And the gentleman, the butler, he obviously is, he's quite tall, quite slightly stooping, very silver haired, almost like looks like he should have left this job ages ago, but is still in the job. And he sort of like comes up, and he sort of like addresses you all, and with his hand still behind his back, he gives a slight nod of his head and say, "Oh, good evening, people, gentlemen, and welcome to Bargrove Hall. My name is Howard, and I welcome."
Oh, thank you very much, Howard. Will you see to our provisions?
Oh, most certainly, sir. Please follow me. The lady Allingham will meet you in the parlour.
Excellent.
And he sort of like, please do follow me, sirs. And he sort of like almost like hobbles off, and the portly lady almost like does a bit of a curtsy, and Howard turns to him and says, "Mrs. Meadows, please make sure that there is hot water and suitable refreshment item for our travellers. And please do inform the lady of the house what time dinner will be served." And she sort of goes, "Oh, yeah, yes, Mr. Howard, of course, Mr. Howard," and sort of like goes toddling off. And Mr. Howard takes you and puts you into the parlour in preparation for meeting Lady Allington. Now I'm going to show you the room again, just like the previous one. It's I'll just uncover a bit of it at a time for you. So I'm just going to move it to you. Hopefully you can't see anything at the moment apart from the title.
Yeah.
Yes. So the first thing I'm going to reveal for you is the almost like the setup of the outside of the house, so you can see what it actually looks like. So you should be able to see it now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the entrance. The road curves round. And you, just so you know what I described, the building that says number 2, that's the stables. Number 3 is the whitewashed building, the cottage, and number 4 looks like an ornamental pond, for the rich and famous. And number 4 is the cemetery that you could all see before the road curved round to bring you to the front. Okay, so Howard brings you into the house, and he's going to take you to the parlour. So the first thing I'm going to reveal to you is the front of the house. The white squares are windows unless specified otherwise. So this here is the front door. Okay, everything else that you can see are windows. The building is has the ground floor and the first floor. It looks like it probably has an attic, and you also know very well that buildings like this is more likely to have a cellar of some description, either for the coal to be delivered, as Mr. King, you remember from last adventure, investigation, sorry, or to store items like wine, etc., etc. So you come in the main entrance. So I'm going to reveal the first area for you. Yeah, so you can see that there's a set of stairs that leads up to the next floor.
Hopefully that's a chandelier rather than some type of occult symbol on the
Yes,
floor.
it is. So yes, that's the chandelier. You notice that there is an exit both to the left and the right of you. This appears to be a corridor that then has a T-junction in it. And going off to the in the other direction, there's no door to this, and that number 8 is obviously the dining room. And as you sort of like walk through, you sort of like have a look, and there's obviously via the flickering warm light, there's obviously a fire in there, and you can see that the table is set up for dinner. It's probably happen about 8 o'clock tonight. You go down the right, the left turn, but the right corridor as you see it, and you come to an end, and then you see the following thing, which I will show you now. To the right, it ends in a dead end, and he takes you to the left, and he takes you into the door at the end of the corridor, and you find that there's the F is a fireplace, as previously stated in other investigations, and you find yourself in the parlor. Howard turns around to you and says, the lady of the house will be along shortly, and he sort of like leaves you in there. I'm just putting your count. I'm not putting your counters on for you to do things like your exact positioning. I'm just putting them on just in case people want to later on move around somewhere else, or do something completely different, so I know whereabouts you are in the house. Okay, yeah, so you're in the parlor at the moment. It's quite a large room, and it has chairs that are overstuffed around the fireplace. It looks like it's a very nice place to sit and relax. There's, as you look around the room, there's various paintings of what you assume are family members, and there's also various trophies or small statues and objects of art that are staggered around, and there's a large canvas that takes up above the fireplace that you assume is the late Sir William. And the only reason you assume this is that draped over the frame is this rather expensive looking black cloth that has been carefully arranged to look in a wonderful flourish down either side. Yeah.
So Peabody's going to stand there respectfully. He's not going to sit down or anything. He's going to remain standing until the lady of the house arrives.
Okay, yeah. Anybody else wishes to do anything else?
So Dr. King will probably be slowly walking around studying the portraits and that sort of thing. It's like lingering by the main one in the room with the veil over it.
Yeah, cool.
And Melvin will join Dr. King on that activity, taking great interest in seeing the history and the portraits and the painting. Trying to name them in my mind, not out loud.
Yeah. Okay, and you sort of like seem to be waiting in here for a good 10 or 15 minutes. And it's at that point you're just about to think, what's going on here? You know, you're not used to waiting this long in any case. That the door opens and Howard is stood there. Oh, so sorry, gentlemen. The lady is currently indisposed. I have instructions to take you to your rooms where you will be able to recover and freshen up after your extensive ride out here or travel out here. And then the lady wishes to welcome you to dinner tonight, 8 o'clock in the dining room.
Oh, splendid. Yes. Lead on, Howard.
So he sort of like heads out. He sort of like leads you back round to number 6 with the entrance hall. Can you see where the stairs are? Mm-hmm. And he sort of like brings you up onto the second floor. Now, just let me... this is the second floor. Can you see that? The first floor, sorry. Now, can you see that hashed bit where it says number 6 on the first floor?
Is that a view down?
Correct. Yeah. So that you come up the stairs, and then that's almost like a hallway, and there's a balcony that rests about just above your waist height, that you can sort of like look down onto the hallway down below, and he takes you to the this direction. Sorry. And it takes you this direction, and you notice straight away that both this door here, and also I'm just going to reveal a bit more for you. And this door here, they appear to be some kind of bathroom door. And they're slightly ajar. You can see inside the ceramic tiles, etc. And number 8, this door here, which is number 18, that is quite grand. And you notice that it's actually closed the door. And as Howard goes past, he almost like instinctively reaches out and turns the doorknob and gives it a bit of a push or a bit of a rattle, and you notice that it's locked at all. And then he brings you round into 3 rooms, and can you move your characters, by the way?
No. I cannot.
Okay.
Me either.
Let's just sort that out. It's just fog of walls, so you're not restricted about like in dynamic lighting, so you will be able to move yourselves about. And you come down, there's 3 rooms, okay, and I will reveal the rooms for you. So those are the 3 rooms. All the 22s are the 3 rooms. Room 22 on the right hand side has an adjoining door that you figure probably goes into room 18, which is the one with the door locked. However, this is whoever goes in there, you notice that it's locked as well. So Mr. Peabody has commandeered the first, the big room across the side. Mr. Bleeker's going in there, yeah.
I was just going to ask, is our luggage been put into rooms, or will we?
No, it looks like there's by the fireplace there's almost like hot water there for you to freshen up on. And you, Dr. King, you try that door quite naturally, or you turn around to Howard and sort of like inquire what's
Probably the
through
latter.
the door, and he thinking that you might have your own ensuite bathroom, but he turns around and he says, "Oh, sorry, sir, that is a second entrance to the master bedroom, which currently, due to the unforeseen circumstances, remains locked. I hope that is all right with you, sir."
I completely understand.
Yeah. Okay.
You hear Peabody saying, "Splendid room, splendid, absolutely splendid."
Yeah, and so you're in your rooms, and you is there anything you would like to do between now and going down for lunch? Dinner, sorry.
How long have we got? Like a couple of hours?
Yeah. So you'll probably got an hour, because you'll need an hour to freshen up and get dressed for dinner.
Yes, so that's probably what King will do. King will unpack. By unpacking, he means if his case is there, he's just going to open his case and find his appropriate dinner clothes, and then he'll probably call for them to be freshly pressed if possible.
Yeah. The Mrs. Meadows will deal with anything like that and make sure that you are suitably dressed for dinner.
Yeah. And then you'll wash up and
yeah. So is there anything apart from getting freshened up and getting dressed for dinner? Is there anything else that anybody else would like to do?
What's the ornaments like in the room? Is there any more paintings or pictures or anything?
These rooms seem to be quite bare. You think they're probably guest rooms that are only used in this situation. Things like the closets the wardrobes are empty apart from your stuff. You do notice that the fires have been lit though, and obviously have to warm up the room. So it's obvious that they were expecting you, but these are definitely guest bedrooms. You figure if you weren't in them, they would probably be empty.
So I probably, these, just looking out, I know it's probably getting darker now, but these are probably looking out to the front of it.
Yes, correct. So
this one just looks out
over the entrance.
Over the entrance, right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just remember that the plan view of Bar Grove Hall, this one up at the top, that is not connected to that ground floor entrance. Does that make sense? So you actually came in here up at the top.
Right.
It's not that number. If you walked out the door here, it doesn't mean that you would go to arrive at the cemetery first.
No, I'm with you.
That's cool. Yeah.
Okay. So if it's about an hour, Peabody will sort of like get ready, but then he'll probably go and knock on King's door and inquire about how his room is, and also onto Bleeker's as well, just inquiring if the accommodation is to their liking.
Yeah. Okay. So Mr. Peabody comes into your knocks politely on your doors and inquires whether or not your rooms are good enough for you. And
Melvin's currently working on a hypothesis, so he's going to just wave his hand at Peabody.
Yeah. And Mr. King.
Well, it depends when Peabody comes in, because Mr. King probably wouldn't open the door straight away if it was within like the first 10 minutes, because he's washing.
Yeah, no, it's after that.
Oh, it's after that. He'll probably open the door in that case and say, "Yes, it seems suitable enough. It's a little bit on the small side."
On the small side.
It is a bit. I trust yours is suitably good for yourself.
Suitable for my stature. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so you sort of like compare the size of your rooms to each other in what appears to be some kind of almost like mine's better than yours situation, and then eventually at 8 o'clock you head down to the dining room, for dinner, which you can see is number 8. As I mentioned beforehand, there is an exit to the left here that seems to go through to the kitchen or something like that, or the scullery, because you notice that people are coming in and putting stuff on the table. And when you arrive, you notice that at the head of the table, to her back to the scullery, so she's sitting on the west head of the table, sits what you can assume to be Lady Amanda Allingham. She is dressed completely in black from head to toe, and she's looking at a framed picture very similar to the one in the parlour above the fireplace, which is, as expected, also has the framed with the black sash. She looks as if her face is still full of grief, but she sat with her lips tightly pursed, and you can see that her long, what obviously should be long blonde hair, is tied back in what only could be described as a fierce or severe bun on the back of her head. And as you come in, she doesn't get up or anything. She just sort of like, almost like doesn't make eye contact with you at all. And she just says, please be seated. Dinner will be served shortly.
Peabody's going to approach the table, but he's going to approach Lady Allingham, but stop at a respectable distance. You know, he's not going to get into her face or anything. And he's going to say, may I convey my deepest condolences on the passing of your husband.
Yes. Make a spot hidden roll for me, please. Yeah, you notice that she's got severe bags underneath her eyes. She's very drawn, and you figure she hasn't slept for some time, and she's sort of like, I accept and say thank you for your kind words, Mr.
Peabody, Willard.
Mr. Peabody, please take a seat. Dinner will be served shortly.
Thank you, most kind.
Yeah, so the rest of you sort of come in and sit down, and she sort of before dinner is served, 2 other people come into the room. One's what appears to be a young girl. She's probably about 7, 8, 9 years old. She has blonde hair and blue eyes, but her skin looks somewhat pale. And accompanying her is quite upright lady who appears to be quite in about her mid-20s. She's very tall and slender, and she has long auburn hair, a clear complexion, and she looks quite radiant. And she sort of comes in, and the little girl sort of runs up to Lady Allingham and sort of puts her arms around her and gives her a hug. And you all notice that Lady Allingham doesn't move. She doesn't reciprocate the hug or anything, and she just sort of says, Ursula, please take a seat. And the lady, the tall, slender lady, goes up and says, oh, please, Ursula, do sit down. And she sort of turns to you all and Lady Allingham says to her, she says, "Please introduce yourself, mademoiselle." And she sort of says, "Oh, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Mademoiselle Josephine Ducret. I am Ursula's governess and tutor." And
when they'd come in, Peabody would have stood up.
Yeah.
Until she had introduced herself and sat down before he would have seated again.
Yeah, and she's very you all feel that sense, that hint of a French accent in there, and she sort of like sits next door to Ursula. So the ladies at the front, Ursula and Mademoiselle Josephine Ducret is on one side of the table, and you three are on the opposite side of the table. There is a place set at the other head of the table, but the chair is fully pushed in, and everybody appears to sit in silence.
Yeah, because of the sober sort of like situation, unless somebody's going to start talking, Peabody's going to sit there in silence to begin with anyway.
Okay, so you all three of you sit there in silence, and Ursula sort of like looks around and almost as if to think, what's happening. She's not familiar with who you are and why you would be in the thing, and she's only about 8, and she sort of like keeps looking up and down, and you all three of you sit there in silence, and then
after a while, if there's a load of silence,
after a while you notice that Howard comes in and sort of like stands there and says, "Dinner, my lady, is served," and a host of maids start to come in and put down your soup, which is obviously your starter. There's a multitude of cutlery laid out before you, and just before you're about to start, you're all waiting very politely for the lady of the house to start eating, and just before that happened, Ursula, the young girl, turns around and says, "Mummy, is Daddy not joining us tonight?" And you notice that Amanda, anybody who would like to roll psychology can roll a psychology check.
Yeah, I'll roll it and Pan say it, but
I'm kind of mentally thinking on my hypothesis, but I'll give it a try.
Dr. King, you notice that she almost like, you figure she's under an immense amount of stress. You don't think Ursula said it maliciously. And you can see that the Lady Allingham just sort of like tenses somewhat. And without even looking at Ursula, she says, "Ursula, my dear, please let us eat." And she reaches down and starts to slurp the soup.
Taking that cue, Dr. King will wait respectfully for her to take the first spoonful, then wait for her to go for the second, and then he'll start using his soup spoon. Which
it's assumed now that everybody starts to eat once she started. Is there anything that anybody would like to say or do during the meal? Or are you quite happy for the meal just to go ahead without engaging in conversation?
At an opportune time, Peabody will try to engage in light conversation, probably starting with Miss Ducret.
Miss Ducret, yeah.
And he will say something along the lines of, Miss Ducret, I can tell from your accent that you're from France. May I inquire which region?
Yeah, she sort of like looks at you and says, "Oh, yes, I am so sorry. I do not know your name."
Willard. Willard Peabody at your service.
Oh, Mr. Peabody, and she almost like emphasizes the word Mr, as if to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be on first name terms with you. And she says, thank you for the inquiry. I was born in Brittany, in France.
Ah, and how long have you been in Britain? England.
I have been in the employment of Lady Allingham here since the birth of Ursula.
Ah, splendid.
Yeah, and sort of like the dinner continues, and
does she have a wedding ring on? Can I tell?
No, she's a mademoiselle.
No.
So that almost like dictates that she's a miss.
Right.
If she was married, then she would have been introduced as Madame Joseph Ducree rather than Mademoiselle. So yeah, and so everybody sort of like talks, and you notice that Josephine and Ursula sort of like make polite conversation with each other, and there seems to be questions about things like English or French, and she sort of like says, oh, Ursula, and en français? And she points to various cutlery and the food, and you enjoy quite an extravagant, very rich meal. And it's at the end of it that Mademoiselle Ducree sort of like pushes a chair back and says, Ursula, please say good night to your mother. And Ursula sort of like comes up to her mother and gave her another hug, and then Mademoiselle Ducree sort of like turns to the others and so says, good night and bonne nuit. And she turns and she leads out, and Lady Allingham stands up and says, gentlemen, I think it's time for us to go to the parlour where we can talk about business. And she stands up and almost like marches down the corridor with you in tow until she gets to the parlour, where she sits on one of the chairs, and she signals to the rest of them and says, please be seated. And she is positioned so she's looking at her late husband, Sir William, thing, and she says, I expect you have many questions. Please indulge me.
Indeed, lady. Yes, your Shearer, the solicitor, but very vague in details.
And she looks at you and says, Mr. Peabody, if you have questions, please ask them.
Yes, so what makes you think that your late husband is haunting the manor?
Right. You may
forgive my bluntness.
You may be aware of several instances that have been happening since my late husband's death. For example, doors and windows which were firmly barred at night have been found wide open the next day. And not only this, but objects have been rearranged, lamps on the table, cutlery, statues, they have been shifted out of place. And when I say out of place, in some cases even moved from room to room. My restless husband's spirit haunts the hall, unable to pass to the other side until his murderer or murderers are brought to justice.
Your daughter, Ursula, I got the distinct impression that over dinner that she was unaware of her father's passing.
Mr. Peabody, losing your father at age 8 takes some accepting. She is somewhat confused at the moment.
Indeed.
If I may,
Yes, Mr. Bleeker.
you said statues were being moved, and I'm sure these statues are quite heavy. Yeah.
Well, more small decorative statues rather than huge Greek ones.
That's fair.
And she points over on the counter, and there's one about this height. As a sort of like a demonstration, it's depicting almost like the birth of Venus, of Aphrodite, something like that.
Do these incidents happen in any particular part of the house or at any particular time? Is it during the day or is it during the night? Or,
as previously mentioned, doors and windows which were barred at night appear open the next morning. It always happens during the night, where my late husband obviously is trying to communicate to us, trying to communicate information about his killers.
What do you think he's trying to communicate? Do you have any idea of the message?
That is why, Mr. Bleeker, we are paying you some considerable money to unearth this mystery.
And has it ever woken you up at night, these instances?
Unfortunately, I sleep very lightly. Since the death of my late husband, nothing is moved within my bedroom when I am awake. I have, before you cast doubt on my observations, we have tried to have servants stay awake all night in order to maybe apprehend any prowlers or perpetrators to the hall. However, they have always seen nothing at all, but still in a different room a window will be found open or items moved.
I take it you mentioned that items have been moved. You've not noticed any have been taken? They've just been moved to a different part of the room or something like that?
That is correct, Dr. King. They have been moved, altered in their position. No, nothing has been stolen. It would not be the custom of my late husband to steal items from his own hall.
No, I was never suggested that he would have done such a thing. I was just merely trying to rule out a third party breaking in.
You consider that my hall is not actually haunted?
Well, we have to consider the possibility.
Apart from Howard and Miss Meadows, yourself, of course, and Mazmur Butzel and your daughter, how many other servants are there in the house?
Mrs. Meadows, my housekeeper, Howard, my butler. There are 3 maids.
3 maids. And would we have your permission to question the servants about these incidents, or would you prefer that it remains between ourselves?
As mentioned before, Mr. Peabody, the servants are well aware of the situation and join me in the conclusion that the hall is haunted by my late husband. Until he can be put to rest, I consider that the hauntings will just grow more and more. I am quite happy to make certain things available for you. You have the free run of the house. There is no room that is barred from you save my late husband's bedroom. This, I hope you understand, is a place of somewhat grief to me. And at the present moment in time, I do not feel capable of entering or even unlocking that room. I will also put at your disposal some of my servants. You are quite welcome to have Mackenzie drive you within the carriage to any location you wish. And Howard has been informed that he is at your service for the duration of your stay here. I trust that your accommodation is suitable.
Yes, very, very nice. Just concerning the movements of the objects, are they always moved within the same room, or are they moved to a different location in the house? And if it is a different location, is it always the same location?
Mr. Peabody, I am not sure what you're asking, but all the relevance of the movement items have shifted. They've been rearranged and in some cases even moved from room to room.
Yes, I mean the relevance was if it's your late husband trying to communicate about his murderers, then it may be pointing to a room where a clue could be found.
I am assuming that my late William is not necessarily giving us clues, but trying to ensure that the bungling amateurs of what are classed as a local constabulary solve this case and find his murderer.
Oh, forgive me, but why did the constabulary stop searching for the murderers? There's just not enough evidence, or
they are bungling amateurs. They do not know or say they cannot locate the reason or how my late husband died. However, not until his killer has been hung can I know rest, gentlemen, nor, I fear, can my husband's tortured soul do so too.
Indeed.
It's important that you ensure that you understand or find out why my late husband is haunting. Maybe he has clues that he can communicate to those who are more familiar with this sort of investigation that may lead to his killers or killer being hung at the gallows, and then we will all be able to rest in peace.
Yes.
It seems reasonable enough. I guess we better get on seeing what we can piece together.
Gentlemen, the night is somewhat young for yourselves. Howard will bring you suitable drinks to the parlour, but please feel free to have the run of the hall tonight before you retire. Remember, maybe avoid the first floor, since that is where I will be sleeping, and Mademoiselle Ducray sleeps, and Ursula, I would not want you walking in on them. Please,
yes, indeed.
Investigate the ground floor of the hall as you see fit. And she goes to stand up. You also quickly stand up with her, and she says, I bid you good night, gentlemen. Breakfast is served at 8 tomorrow. And she almost goes out, almost like a shadow, thus slowly moving, and you suddenly gain this impression of how thin she actually is, almost like skeletal, despite, and you sort of think back to the meal, and even though it was quite a superb meal, you suddenly remembered that there was food always left on her plate, and she often left it and didn't maybe had a couple of mouthfuls, and that's it. Okay, so would you like to investigate the ground floor before you go to bed, or is there something else that you would like to do before you retire for the night?
Peabody would indeed like to investigate the ground floor, maybe get a lay of the land, what there is, see whether or not there's a way down into the cellar, etc. as well.
Dr. King and Mr. Bleeker, what would you like to do?
Bleeker would like to use his library walk, which is my stealth skill, to quietly walk around the house, going primarily for the second or the first floor, not the ground floor.
So the first floor is the place that the lady told you to please avoid, because the ladies will be retiring, and she's quite happy for you to search up in that room, but on the first floor, but maybe in the morning, not when the ladies have retired. Just so you know, Mr. Bleeker, there is a library, and you inquire about it to Howard, and Howard does sort of like point out that there is a library here. The hall does actually have a library if you'd like to look at various books there.
Okay, and my bad, I got confused on ground versus first. I'll stay on the ground floor, but still doing my librarian walk, and I'll make my way to the library if it is on the ground floor.
Okay, so 27 here that I've just revealed. Here.
I'll definitely slink off to there.
That's the library. These rooms round where you are, let me just reveal these for you, and then I will tell you what they are. Okay. I'm quite happy. You don't need to remember these. You can ask me what was number 15 again, for example. Number 15 is actually an unused room. It's got various pieces of furniture on, but it's got those huge white dust cloths over them. Room number 10 is a billiards room. It has a billiard table in it. Number 16 is some kind of trophy room. It has things including stuffed animals and things that have obviously been got from abroad, say, or something like that. Number 7 is the cloakroom. It's where your coat and hat and gloves, etc., are currently being stored. Number where Mr. Bleeker is, number 27 is the library. Okay, I'm just going to reveal the rest of it for you now so you can see.
Sorry, did I miss 14? Or...
No, not yet. I'm just revealing it so you can see the entrance into 14. So number 12 is the scullery, and number 11 is the kitchen. Number 14 is the pantry. It's where all the dry food, etc., is kept. Number 17 is a chapel. Is some kind of religious. If you look in where you can see 13, it goes down to the cellar, and I can show you the cellar, what that looks like. It's down at the bottom left hand side of the map. Okay, it has a coal chute on it as well, and so that should be all the ground floor sorted. So Mr. Bleak, would you like to make for me a library roll?
Absolutely.
And remember, Mr. Peabody, just so you know, of a lot of the time when I ask for people to do a roll, if it's not to do with whether or not you find anything or not, it's to do with the level that you find. So, for example, if you were trying to find a book and you failed, you might get a book with minimum amount of information. a success you get more, a hard success you get more, an extreme success, so forth and so on. There's Mr Bleeker. There's several books that you actually find in the library. The first one is a history of the Bargrove Parish. It's quite a slim leather-bound book. It was printed in 1750, written by unknown authors. An otherwise unknown author called Thomas Worthington. There seems to be details and various facts and legends and half-truths about the area. There is various almost like superstitions there. Rather than describing it all to you, please at any point say to me, is there anything in this book about? And I will allow you to have that information. There's also a thick gilt embossed book. It's a private volume printed solely for the Allingham family, written by the late Charles Allingham while he was a student at Cambridge, you notice. The book details the rise and falls of the Allinghams from the time of the Fourth Crusade, which took place in Byzantium in 1204, I think, through successive generations. And after the battle which stormed Byzantium, the first Sir Allingham was knighted, and the family has flourished ever since. There is some information about the curse. It tends to repeat what you've heard. It's interesting that there's a little bit more information that you find. It says that it was the death of Sir Montague, who was referred to as a hot-blooded rogue. That's what he was referred to, and he was the first male of the family, according to this book, to fall victim to the Allingham curse. Interestingly, there's a list, a narrative of what actually happened, and apparently Sir Montague apprehended what is labelled as a gypsy boy, and he apprehended him because he caught him in the act of stealing a horse from Bargrove Hall. And Montague, in his right, beat the lad, but in his frenzy, he actually beat him to death and actually killed him. And however, unbeknown to Sir Montague, the boy's mother, was some kind of wise woman of the gypsies, and she placed a curse on the family. And the exact words of the curse, and they're actually written down. I'll cut and paste it into Discord for you, but I'll tell you it now. It says, "As my boy hath died young, so shall ye and your sons, until the old gods waken and night becomes day." I'm assuming that you'll probably shared this. So I've put it into the Call of Cthulhu Discord, so everybody can see it. There's also a interesting piece of writing titled "The Burnt Grove," and I don't know whether or not I have it with me. Yes, I do, and I'll share it with everybody, just in case you want to all have a read, because I'm sure the Mr Bleeker and send it. It's Dartmoor in Roman days, so it's an account that you find about this mention of the old god, and by their magic and by the fearful power of the old gods, the Romans were defeated. Only one man survived to tell the tale, and he was mad. This event is placed, by my reckoning, in the vicinity of Bargrove Village. Notice it doesn't say Hall, whose name may well be a corruption of Burnt Grove, perhaps on the hill that locals call Eagle Tor, in approximately 48 AD. Interestingly enough, 9 Hispania was considered cursed legion thereafter, and vanished to the last man in the mists beyond Hadrian's Wall. Yeah, so that's the ground floor. Does anybody wish to do or look in any other places or do anything before retiring to bed?
So Peabody wants to go round each room. He wants to sort of like get the general layout of the manor.
Yeah, that's fine.
From what he can tell, there's only 2 main doors into it: the front and the back one, and then the rest are all windows.
Correct.
And the windows get they're shuttered, I suppose, and they're
closed.
The inside. The other thing that he wants to do as he's going around looking at is to the trophy room. Is there any armaments at all there, or is there any armaments in particular, long rifles, anything like that?
Okay, roll your luck roll. If you're successful, we'll say that there's rifles in there. No.
Okay.
There's no armaments of any type. It's more trophies to do with, say, hunting or relics that's been brought back. There's nothing that... make a history roll, Mr. Peabody. Do you have history as a skill?
I must have, because it starts off at 5% normally, and I've got 20. So
yeah. So just roll your history. There's nothing in this room that you can locate or recognise as anything famous or impressive. It looks, in your eyes, it looks almost like personal trophies that the late Sir William probably captured or collected and is placed in here.
Do they look from abroad? Are they things like elephant heads and...
Yeah, or the odd tusk.
Yeah.
He looks like he's well travelled.
Yeah, it's not something from England.
No, not at all.
Okay. So yeah, once he's done a sweep up the house and sort of like familiarised himself with the various rooms, then he'll seek out Bleeker in the library. Okay.
Dr. King, is there anything you would like to do while Mr. Bleeker's been doing his investigation in the library?
Are any of the servants still about, or have they all disappeared off for the night as well?
They're probably tidying up in the kitchen.
Okay.
In the scullery.
No, but that's not something he'd do.
Correct. Yeah.
No, not that I can think of. He'll probably sort of potter around a couple of the rooms nearby and then go off to see if there's like a map of the grounds or a sketch of the grounds or something in the area.
Yeah, so what you can see above that I've already revealed to you is the sort of like the lay of the land. So you eventually meet up with Mr. Bleeker and Mr. Peabody in the library. Yes, Mr. Bleeker, is there anything that you would like to engage in idle chit-chat?
I'm working on a hypothesis, and I'm hoping that I might be able to find a book to help me here. And it's probably more due to Bleeker's interest in astronomy. He wants to see if maybe all of these deaths, if there's some kind of celestial body that it's been happening on. I know it's not the same month for a lot of them, but perhaps something strange that has to do with celestial bodies.
Okay, two things. You're quite welcome to do that role. It will probably be a hard or extreme success, and most likely it's going to take you a long time to do it because you're going to have to take a load of books down and cross-reference it. So it might be something to do either to work into the night or to do tomorrow. Before breakfast or after breakfast. It's completely up to you. You can work into the night if you require.
For the most part, he's just been kind of mulling it, and it's going to be a continuing process, I guess. Okay. If he's interrupted, he's not going to work into the night, though.
Well, Mr. Peabody and Dr. King have arrived in the library. Mr. Peabody, was there a reason for you to go into the library?
Yeah, I mean, he's going when he goes into and Bleeker's said what he said. He's going to say, "Are we going to use this salt and to
flour, yeah,
and flour to trap this so-called phantom?"
Well, I don't believe you really trap a phantom. You dispel spirits, I think, is usually how it's phrased in most of the.
I mean, could it just not be scaremongering tactics by someone after the house?
Certainly, it'd be worth knowing if there's any people that don't like the Allinghams.
Yes, perhaps they have rivals or family enemies. I believe he. The recently deceased, when he was alive, was politically active in the area. Perhaps he's upset or frustrated some people in that respect.
Well, it seems that their family definitely upsets people. At this point, I'll start sharing all of the books and pointing out the story about the gypsy horse thief boy and to everybody. They make enemies pretty well.
Well, it does seem to be a very large house to cover. Is there any way that we can narrow it down?
Perhaps we could ask if
I don't think you brought that much flour with you, Beaker.
No.
Perhaps apart from his bedroom, we could ask if there were certain rooms that he frequented more than others whilst he was alive. For example, the library or the trophy room, or if they've noticed that any of the rooms in particular had the most activity of items being moved and doors and windows opened, and focus on those.
She didn't seem to be too particularly concerned with all of the specifics or the data points, so to speak. She didn't take record, which is a little troubling for us, I suppose, since that would certainly help.
We can always ask, and maybe one of you two could ask the servants in the morning.
No, I mean I have had a quick look around the house, and from my point of view, there's a couple of places that we could probably stand guard one night and keep an eye out for movement.
Well, I believe with what they've told us, according to the story of the curse that we're learning about, the curse or ghost doesn't show itself when people are around. It only goes to other rooms. So I'm afraid anywhere we stand guard, we won't see any ghost if it's going by those rooms.
Yeah, and unless it's somebody else who's moving things.
Oh, yeah.
We need to narrow it down, Bleeker.
Yeah, you're right. I'm getting all into the ghost story, and I can't help but feel like I don't know. It doesn't seem like a real thing.
Surely, if we have somebody on guard in the entrance hall and in the scullery, that should cover us for people traveling to and from the other rooms.
Yeah, but I'm not somebody who's used to fighting off intruders. Are you, Miss Peabody? King?
I have been in the war, but I was thinking it's more probably one of the servants, maybe being paid a little bit extra for some for some movement of goods.
Why? Who would want to be paying one of the servants to do?
I think my explanation is a bit more feasible than yours of it's a ghost.
Just to let you know, if you plan to stay awake all night and get no sleep, then tomorrow your skill rolls will be at that -1 due to you being tired.
What was if we did it in shifts?
If you did it in, well, it depends how long you actually get to sleep after that. But as long as you have roughly 6 to 8 hours sleep, then you don't incur the -1 to the roll.
Right. So if we do sort of like 3-hour shifts of maybe keeping an eye out in the main foyer.
Yeah, if you wish to sit there or for that length of time, then that would be absolutely fine.
I suppose we may as well try it if it'll solve that variable.
So, Mr. Peabody, where are you suggesting that people?
Well,
sit?
I mean, I had an idea of 2 places. I thought if we had somebody here, they could see whether or not anybody. Where's the servants' quarters?
The servant quarters are in the attic.
Right. So I thought if we had somebody keeping an eye here, but maybe in the shadows, they could keep an eye on the stairwell, see whether or not anybody came down.
Okay.
And then if we had all the other doors covered. The only thing that wouldn't be covered would be if somebody came in through the back door. But I suppose that they could keep a sort of like a movement between here and here.
Well, if they came through the back door, which is here, to get into the rest of the house, if you look at the map, they'll either have to come through this door, and in which case into the dining room here, or they would have to come through that door.
Right. Okay. So maybe positioning in the corner here so that they can, so that the person whoever's on guard can, or who's investigating it, can keep an eye out on the stairs and the various doors.
Okay, so if you do your guard duty for like 3 hours at a time, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that'll be fine.
Peabody will take the first one.
Okay, so Mr. Peabody's going to take the first watch sat in the hallway, and then get one of your other 2, and then the final one to take the next 3 hours. Okay then. So Dr. King and Mr. Bleeker, is there anything that you would like to do before retiring?
If we're going to be doing shifts, then no, Dr. King's going to head off to mess and get whatever shut-eye he can.
Yeah. So this is before before you retire. So it's before the first shift begins, Mr. Bleeker. If you wish to do anything,
I'm just gonna borrow the book that was most interesting and retire to my room. Get some sleep before I get the spooky shift, hopefully.
Okay then. Right. There's 2 things I would like to ask you first. First thing, could you tell me what each of your power is?
Mine is 50.
Mine is 50.
55.
Okay then. So that's cool. And therefore it's Mr. Peabody first.
Yeah, before he settles down or on his shift, he's going to go into this room here, and he's going to grab his walking cane.
Yeah. Okay, so you're taking the first shift, so like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock to midnight, or 9 o'clock to midnight, and you notice that the servants all retire. They go upstairs, they go up the main staircase and disappear off, and you're sort of like left in not darkness, because you've got a candle that's been left with you. Could you roll a listen roll for me?
Yeah, so he wants to try to learn the movements of the general noises of the house anyway. When he's
Yeah, so you sort of like sit there, and as you're trying to learn the noises of the house, you every now and again, you're not too sure, but you can almost hear like the running of feet, sort of like a da 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 da, and then standing still, then da 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 da.
Does it sound like they're coming from upstairs or to his left?
Well, you think it's upstairs, but it's you're not quite sure. Then you think it's downstairs, and after a while, you suddenly feel sat there. You suddenly start to feel very cold. And it doesn't come on straight away. You're slowly getting colder and colder, and you sort of like put your jacket round you.
He'll leaving the candle or taking the candle. He'll go to the cloakroom and he'll get his overcoat. Obviously,
Yeah. So once you come round the corner there, you suddenly recognise the reason you are cold. Because the door opposite at the end of the corridor to the billiard room is wide open, and there's a cold draft of, well, it's almost like the wind is blowing down there from the billiard room outwards into the corridor.
Peabody will put his walking cane underneath his arm so that he can hold his hand in front of the candle, to stop the cold breeze to be accidentally blowing it out. And he's going to head down because he's thinking it's strange because when he checked the house, was everything shuttered?
Yes.
Was all the windows shuttered?
Yes.
So for a cold breeze to come through, it was going to have to be unshuttered. So he's going to head down to the room, into the billiard room, to see whether or not the shutters have maybe.
Yeah, so you don't need to open the door because the door's wide open, and you go into the billiard room, sort of like covering your flame of the candle, and it's flickering quite a lot because the window opposite you is open. It's not completely open. It's just open slightly ajar. You know, the two windows have been open sort of like this much, and that's causing almost like this funnel of wind to come down. And the fire in the billiard room has been out for some time, so it's quite chilly in here.
Can he? I mean, he wants to close the windows.
Yeah. So
but is there anything that he could light with his candle first?
Well, what you can do is that you can light a candle in the room. There's probably or gas lights there, so you can light that, turn the gas on, light it up, and then you can close the window.
Once he's done that, he'll place his cane on the billiard table and reach to close the.
Yeah, could you roll a spot hidden for me, please? Yeah, so you sort of like go out the window to grab the shutters to bring them thing, and it's even with the light coming out from the gas light, you notice that there's like a thin layer of snow on the ground now, and out of the window, directly underneath the window, there's a set of footprints. It looks as if someone has been stood straight outside the window. The only thing that you notice is that the footprints, two things that you see with your success roll is, number one, they're barefooted. You can clearly see the toes. And number two, they appear to be too small to be an adult. It looks like it's like a child's footprint in the snow. And then you sort of like have a good look at them and then close the shutters.
But they didn't seem to be leading away or anything. They were just...
It just stood as if they had come up to the window and just stood in front of the window. And that's it.
Okay.
There was none leading away or going up to it, just as if it had been stood outside the window.
Okay, so closing the windows and barring it again. Peabody wants to have a look on the floor of this room to see whether or not there's any, because it's snowing outside.
Yeah, that's what your spot
right. I
hidden.
didn't know whether or not it was
yeah.
for just outside.
No. If you'd rolled hard or extreme, because the reason I've taken it out is because you've actually gone up to the window, so your boots or whatever would have covered anything that would have been there.
Right, and is so looking around the room, is there anywhere that anybody could be hiding? You have a look underneath the billiard table or anything like that?
There's nobody underneath the billiard table. And you go to see that there's like a cupboard that the cues are kept in, and you open that and there's nobody in there at all.
But I mean, from Peabody's point of view, for somebody to have opened those shutters, they must have managed to get down without coming past him. So
they were already outside.
There. Yeah. But the window was barred from the inside, was it?
It was shuttered, yes. It wasn't barred. It was shuttered.
So for the shutters to be opened, did they have to be opened from the inside?
Or somebody could pry it open from the outside.
Right. Okay. He just wants to, before he goes back, he just wants to go into each of these rooms with his candle, sort of 9, 16, the 2 15s.
Yeah.
And he just wants to have a look round.
Roll your spot hidden.
Are there? This is going something about the era rather than the thing. Were the stuff like what was it called, a dumbwaiter?
Yeah.
Was that type of thing? Had that been introduced by now? Or?
Yeah, but that would only be to service when. Like the kitchen would be on the ground floor, but on here there doesn't need to be a dumbwaiter at all.
Right. Okay.
You sort of like hold out your candle and you have a look round, and you can't see anything that's different. You don't think? I mean, you can't see anything unusual at all.
Okay, so. Putting it down to, well, I mean, he definitely heard movement. He's going to go back and he's going to finish off his watch.
Okay, so you finish the watch, and is it Dr. King next?
I don't think it was decided.
Right,
so I think it was.
So Dr. King, you can be next in the line, and
okay. Dr. King will once he's gone down and got the collected the candle, he'll do sort of like a quick circuit. So he'll walk up. I'll just move the token. He'll sort of like walk up to here, walk into the library.
So are you
that way, and then he's just going to the end of the corridors and poking his head. He's not going into every single room. He's just walking one end of the house to the other.
Then what?
He's going to go back to sit at the thing, and he'll have brought a book, a good old like classics book, probably something to do with something. He's going to sit and read that.
So you patrol once round the ground floor, then you come and sit down in the allotted corner that has been Alec informed by Mr. Peabody to sit, and you sort of like sit there and you settle down with your book, and you've got just over the midnight hour. Can you roll for me a listen roll? Okay, the night seems to be passing quite normally, and you're quite used to the creaks and groans of the old house, but one that suddenly changes all that is that the door directly in front of you, leading into room 12, you notice all of a sudden that the door handle goes da-da-da-da-da-da. It's sort of like rattling, as if somebody's checking to see whether or not it's open or locked. What do you wish to do?
So he'll pause from his book and he's just going to look up and he's just going to just stare at it dumbfounded for a few moments.
Yeah, and you stay.
And then he's going to wait for it to stop.
So you do that classic that you look at it and you think, no, it's fine. Yeah. And as if you almost like dreamt it, and just as you say that and relax back into your chair, it goes da, 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 da.
He's gonna stand up and he's gonna get the he's still got his book open in one hand and he's got the candle in another hand, and he's gonna take a few paces forward as if he's kind of like disbelieving what he's seeing, but he's not kind of like going to go straight up and he's not going to call out or anything. He's going to slowly walk towards the door. So he's probably going to get to about halfway and then stop and see if it's still going there.
No. As soon as you started to walk towards it, it stopped.
He's
just roll your a no roll, so your intelligence. With that wonderful roll, you suddenly think that if anything was on the opposite side, moving towards the door with your candle would have started to cast a shadow, not a shadow, a light beam underneath the door.
Yeah. Without calling out, he's going to tuck the book under his arm that's holding the candle, so he's now got his right hand for free. He's going to carry on walking towards the door and extend his hand to the door handle and slowly open it. I'm assuming it's unlocked, but
yeah, it is. It's unlocked, and you turn the handle and you push open the door, and you can see on the opposite side the scullery.
Completely misheard you for a second. I thought you just a skull. I was like,
no, scullery.
I was like, oh. He's going to poke his head. So he's going to take a half, it's like not standing in the doorway. He's half in the doorway, but half out. So, he's still got like a foot in the doorway. And he's going to lean, and hold the candle up. Not holding the candle up with the candle. And he's just going to.
Roll your spot hidden.
Check that all the doors and windows are closed.
Yeah, you sort of like have a look around and you check the windows, and as you go round to sort of like the set of stairs that's going down, which you assume is going down to the cellar, you're not 100% sure, but you almost, as the candlelight came round, you almost feel that you saw a shadow, almost like disappearing down the stairs, as if the light just caught it for that moment. And it went down the stairs.
King's going to. He'll pause, thinking, "Did I see that? Did I not see that?" He's going to move to the top of. He's not going down. He's going to move to the top of the stairs and cast the light down the stairs to see if he can see anybody on the stairs.
Yeah, so as you know, it goes down, and if you look at the map down at the bottom left hand corner, the stairs come down here, so you're looking there at the moment, and you sort of like your torchlight goes down the stairs and it reveals the stairs going down. There doesn't seem to be anything down there. Roll a listen roll. Yeah, you can't hear anything either.
He'll pause up there for a good 20-30 seconds, and he's going to be counting them slowly in his head, going
almost like seems as if it takes a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. If he doesn't hear anything in that time, he's going to give up and go back to his lookout spot.
Yeah, you don't hear anything at all, and the house seems to be completely quiet, and you head back to your lookout point. And
he's going to try and settle into his book, but he's probably going to be finding it hard to settle back into the book. It's like he's going to find himself reading the same line twice, then looking up and then trying to go back to the book and then reading the next line a couple of times.
And interestingly enough, you sort of like last out your watch before it's your turn, Mr. Bleeker, to take yours. But something happens to you before that happens. And I have to say at this point that this happens to the person with the highest power. Okay, because it's going to sound as if it always happens to you, but I'd just like to say, because you fall into a sleep and you have this unnerving dream, and you see the body of Sir William, and he's bound prostrate to what appears to be like a standing stone, and he's tied up tightly to this stone, and you see him, and in the dream it's as if you're walking towards him, and you can see him, and as you get closer and closer, you can hear that he's almost like crying for help. And then as you get closer and closer, you reach out to try to undo the ropes to release him. And just as you do that, flames suddenly leap out all around him. And you hear Sir William screaming in your dream as the flames sort of like consume him, and you start to see his flesh on his face crisp up and sort of like pull around, and all you can hear is this screaming as he's almost like burnt alive, and he's just screaming and screaming, and all of a sudden through all that noise you hear a tiny whisper in your ear that says, "Wake up," and you suddenly are wide awake. And it's one of those dreams that you suddenly look round the room, because you're almost like definitely sure that the voice that said "wake up" was not in the dream. You almost like expected to see somebody in the room, but as you shine your candle round, or light your candle and show it round, your room, apart from the soft glow from maybe a gone out fire, is completely and utterly empty. And that, gentlemen, is where we will leave it for this week's session. So the next session will start off with Mr. Bleeker's watch after his spooky dream that he's had, and then it will be time for you to decide where you would like to go. So people, well done. Any comments at all?
I'm so glad I got salt and brick dust. I don't know if it'll do anything, but I'm so glad I got it.
What's the brick dust for?
I think I read somewhere that brick dust in like a hoodoo or voodoo culture can sometimes ward evil spirits.
Yeah.
But I've heard the same about salt. So
yeah,
I've heard salt one before.
The question is though,
is it an evil spirit?
Is Bargrove Hall haunted?
No, it's full of girls sleepwalking.
So well, we will see next. I was just thinking, if it's a girl sleepwalking, how would she get to that door?
Servant stairs, of course.
her climbing skill is at max. She just vaulted out of the window.
Yeah, my sister used to sleepwalk, and I kid you not, she used to run down the stairs 4 at a time, like sprint down them with her duvet trailing.
Yeah,
trailing
but what would your sister be doing in Bargrove Hall?
Does that? I can't see where the stairs come. There's only one set of stairs coming down from from the.
But we don't know. There might be a secret. It's an old mansion.
Oh, I see. You think there's
until we found the plans of it and talked to the person that's been here the longest, probably.
I see what you mean.
Howard. It may be that ages ago. The lady of the house was having, sort of like a Lady Chatterley lover thing down at Bargrove Hall, and she'd actually had something being built from the cellar going out.
Oh, I see. How exciting.
There could be that it's the source of air for smuggling and contraband. There could be smugglers' tunnels or anything.
Okay, so we'll see how this. I always thought this was going to last 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, but I can see it's going to last longer as we go in search of plans next week. So well done. Out in the middle of Dartmoor, in a haunted house with Dartmoor Prison next door. What else? What could possibly go wrong? So well done, guys. Thank you for joining me with the Call of Cthulhu event tonight and investigating this strange mystery. If you're in chat, then thank you very much for coming along and supporting us. I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to catch up with the previous investigation, then you can find it on my site, inwills.co.uk, where there is a bar. If you just scroll down, there's a category given over to Call of Cthulhu with nothing else. So I will be back tomorrow with some ESO streaming, but until then, I would just like to say to each and every one of you, please remember to be who you are and say what you think, because the people who mind don't matter and the people who matter don't mind. Have fun, guys, and I will catch you all later. And until then, sleep well. Remember, it's only a ghost story.
Anyways.
Have fun, guys. See you later. Bye.
Bye.